What is going on, guys? They call me Ampy, and welcome back to a new video. How do I start this video? I haven't uploaded in quite some time. I've been trying to find my passion with video games again, and being that quarantine was one hell of a long year and it's continuing to 2021, put all my passion and all my time into Elder Scrolls Online, and I want to talk about that today. So where have I been? I've been playing Elder Scrolls Online quite a bit. I was an Xbox player. I got to CP about 300 before swapping to PC in March of 2020, and I'm around CP 720-ish, maybe 730. And I want to answer the question that everybody always asks when it comes to these games. Is ESO worth playing in 2021? Everybody's always jumping from MMO to MMO. I've been there, I've done that. Final Fantasy, Guild Wars 2, BDO. There's so many different games, but I've never really stuck with one until this past year. And I think I owe a little bit of that to quarantine, but I do want to speak on the positive and negative aspects of this game so you can make that decision for yourself. I will say that jumping into this game this past year has been so helpful for me, not just as a gamer, but as a person. It's giving me new things to look forward to. It's giving me progression. I'm really enjoying my time playing this game. So with all that being said, if you could consider dropping a like, as it's my first Elder Scrolls video, I'll take any comments and feedback that you guys have, especially for some of you guys that have been playing since 2014. And consider following my Twitch channel as well, as I do want to hang out with you guys so we can run some dungeons and quests and do all the fun stuff that you do when we're playing these games. So starting from the top, and the biggest one for me in making my decision to invest a ton of my time into these games, as they are huge time sinks, is what happens to your gear as far as progression is concerned. When I play other games and new patches come out, it invalidates the gear that you've been grinding for this entire time. So a perfect example of that would be your purple or gold gear that you've grinded for weeks or months to get that drop in that raid, that mythic raid, will be invalidated by a new patch that comes out by a green or blue that drops simply from questing the day one of a new expansion. And I don't know about you guys, but it's always bothered me. Why would I grind all that time to begin with if it's just going to be tossed in the trash in the next expansion? And you could argue that it's great for transmog materials and it provides incentive and keeps people playing. And some people play these games for those reasons. You want to grind away. But for me, it just felt like a waste of my time. And I'm happy to say that's not the case for ESO. Gear is locked at CP 160, so once you hit that level, the gear will never be outgraded by something else. Now, of course, there's gear quality, and that it can go up from normal gray quality gear all the way up to gold if you have the materials, but nothing that comes out in a future patch or update will be inherently stronger, at least as far as power level is concerned, than what you're currently wearing. Again, as long as you're at CP 160. Now, that begs the question of what is there to grind for? What's the point of updates if the stuff isn't getting stronger? And the answer to that question is build variety. There are new sets that are inherently the same power level, but provide different buffs, bonuses. They may complement your build in different ways. Mythic items were introduced not too long ago that are essentially one-piece sets. There's three-piece sets, five-piece sets. There's really a lot of variety in the ways that you could build your character. That doesn't invalidate everything you currently own, so you're not wasting your time, which I really appreciate. I think the next big question that people ask when they join up in MMOs is, what is there to do? How much content is there? And the game's been out since 2014, so you can imagine there's quite a backlog of content there for you guys to play, which comes in the form of DLCs and much larger expansions called chapters in our case. So throughout the year, there'll be a number of DLC drops that are smaller packs of content that provide some quest lines and dungeons. And then the much larger expansions, chapters, really come with new regions to explore, a lot of Elder Scrolls lore, which I'm not at all familiar with, but I know some of you guys out there will be, coupled with some new systems, some new skill lines, new dungeons, new raids especially. So there's quite a bit of content there, at least from the PvE side of things, that I personally still haven't gotten to. I'm, again, CP 720, 730-ish, and I've only done maybe 2 or 3 DLCs and maybe a chapter or 2. So there's quite a bit to do as far as PvE is concerned. PvP is an entirely different conversation, so I'm just going to get that out of the way right now. You could PvP in 4v4v4 battlegrounds, BGs, or you could take part in the much larger Cyrodiil Alliance War, which pits your faction against the other two in a simultaneous large-scale PvP battle. And it sounds really cool on paper, but anybody that plays Cyrodiil will tell you that the performance has a lot to be desired. It's really not that good, if I'm being honest. Now, when it works, it's a great PvP experience, and I think a lot of people feel this way, but it's really hard to have a competitive PvP experience when people are glitching and lagging around the entire place. There's a lot of people in that one instance of a PvP campaign, especially some of the more popular campaigns, so I can see how this is an issue, I would like to see it improved, but if you're going to play ESO in 2021 for PvP, the content is there, but the stability isn't as much. You can get around that by playing BGs, and I'd probably recommend that more so if you're just getting started anyway. So the follow-up question to the content question that I personally have felt every time I join an MMO: the game's been out since 2014. Is it too late to start? Am I going to be left behind? And I absolutely love the way that this game handles the situation, because you're essentially free to play and do anything as you please. The map is completely open. You can play the first DLC that ever came out in the game. You could play the most recent DLC that ever came out. Whatever you and your friends want to do when you play, you can absolutely do it in whatever order you choose. Now, there are some caveats to that, like actually owning that specific set of DLC that you'd like to play, or choosing the same faction as your friends if you're going to go into the Cyrodiil PvP campaign. But outside of that, guys, have at ESO in any order you please. There are no prerequisites for playing certain things. If you want a specific mythic item that's only available by doing X DLC that came out in 2015, go ahead and play it. If you started a DLC and you're getting bored and you want to try something else, go play another DLC. It really doesn't matter outside of maybe some story elements that you'd want to follow in chronological order. That's entirely up to you. Choose the content you want to play and how you want to play it. And that's really a message to all of the solo guys out there who are looking for an RPG experience. You can play a surprisingly good amount of this game completely solo. All of the story campaign can be done solo, a lot of the DLC, a good portion of the early non-DLC dungeons can be soloed as well. There's a lot of cool opportunities for solo players to get their hands dirty here, but I will say the game definitely opens up with other players, with friends, with guildmates. Trials cannot really be done solo. You're going to need a team for that. A lot of the 4-man arenas are really super sweet. A lot of cool gear there too. But again, if you want to play this game as a solo RPG experience, if you're coming from Skyrim, go have at it. Now, it's a very different title from Skyrim, so don't come in thinking it's going to be one-to-one. But with that being said, if you want to play alone, nobody's going to stop you. Now, I want to move on to something that's very important to me, and probably to a lot of you guys when you're playing these high fantasy games, is class identity. Now, it's not an anime MMORPG, so you're not going to see a lot of those over-the-top, super flashy visual effects and armor sets like you're going to see in games like Final Fantasy, but I think Elder Scrolls does a good enough job at allowing you to customize your character. There's a wide variety of dyes. The class abilities are very specific to each class to make you feel like you're playing that class. They are very easily distinguishable between one another when you're playing in a group or you're roaming the world and you see somebody throw out yellow Adrix spears, you know that's a Templar, or you see somebody covered in lightning, that's a sorcerer. I think it's very cool when you see somebody out in the world doing something, interacting with the world, and you could say, oh hey, I understand what they're doing, oh hey, I know what class they are. Because everybody wants to look like a certified high fantasy badass at the end of the day when you're playing these games. I obsess about the Templar class. I want it to be a holy paladin, Templar, knight type of class. I went straight to the Templar, and there's just a lot of different skills and ways that I could play my class, which is another great reason to pick up the game as well. Every class can excel at every single role in one way or another. Now, of course, there's always going to be a meta. There's going to be classes that do some things better than others, but in my Templar example, I started out as a Templar healer, which is arguably one of the best healers in the game next to Wardens, and I kept obsessing over the class. I want to be this holy light character, but I want to do DPS, so I ended up being a stamina DPS, and it's one of the most easily understood stamina DPS classes, and one of the strongest as well with Deadly, VO, Reliquin. There's so many different ways to make this work, and then I wanted a Magicka DPS Templar, so I converted my healer into a Magicka DPS Templar, and I created another healer, and now I have a Tankplar, which is not meta by any means. It's probably the worst tanking class in the game because you could just do so much more with DKs and Wardens and Sorcerers, but I wanted to be this high fantasy Templar tank, and I do it. I make it work for dungeons, I make it work for 4-man content, but if I want to push those endgame trials and hard modes and such, I'll probably bring something more meta like a Sorc or a Warden tank. But my Tankplar is fun as hell to play, and again, I love the class identity, I love the abilities, and it's something I'm going to play if I want to push some easy pledges or I want to hang out with some friends. So there's a ton of different ways to play something that you'd like to play to make something really work, and that's what this is about. Choose what you want to play and how you want to play it. So to wrap up this video, I do want to leave you guys with a few reasons why you wouldn't pick up ESO, or maybe clarify some of the gripes you've seen on Reddit about the game. And I think combat comes to the top of the list. When I first played this game in 2014, the combat turned me off so very much. It's very floaty, it doesn't feel very impactful, and I'd say for the most part, I agree with that statement. I don't think the combat in ESO is all that great, and you're doing quite a lot of it, so how can anybody play this game for extended amounts of time when something doesn't feel good to play? And I initially got around this issue by strictly healing. Now, healers aren't necessarily DPS characters. They provide buffs and heals to your group, and of course debuff bosses. You kind of have to crank out some DPS as you get into higher tier content, but you don't necessarily have to. And that's kind of how I started. I wanted to familiarize myself with the game by strictly healing. Once I started to see how sets would work together, 2-piece monster sets, 5-piece armor sets, weapon sets, arena sets work together, the social aspect of the game with housing, a lot of the dungeon content which I enjoy running, it started to feel really good to play this game. And then I transitioned over to DPS characters, and now I even have 2 tanks. So it's initial hump that you may or may not get over, if I'm being honest with you guys, but I always recommend healing to start because it's a great way to get into the game without essentially getting into the combat per se, and then you can decide from there if it's something that you'd like to stick with. Guys, thank you so much for watching, for making it this far in my first ESO video. I really plan on doing more, and if you're new to the game, please join the Discord server in the description. We have a guild as well. It's a very small social guild, so there's a lot of one-on-one interactions going on and questions being answered, so if that sounds like your style, I really recommend joining the Discord and joining up from there. We can get you as much info as you need. Thanks again, guys, for watching. I'll see you on the next video.